My name is Rachel Jarvis. I'm Director of the Mosaic Rooms, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here and our speakers today. I firstly, of course, want to thank our collaborators and also long-term kind of partners, the British Museum and Shubak Festival, for all the work on today's event. And I, of course, want to thank our supporters, the Ouissi Foundation and Al-Murad Al-Tafaki, for supporting today's event. Today, our speakers will give a series of presentations and panel discussions, which will reflect over 3 sessions on how art and culture from the Arab world can survive, thrive, respond to situations of conflict, censorship, and change. After this morning's first session, we end it with a performance for the absent ones, which will actually take place in the next door theatre in the BP Lecture Theatre. So if you would all kindly follow us after this session ends, we'll move into there before you then break for lunch. And as Venetia's kindly pointed out, there's a lot happening throughout the day here at the British Museum, so I hope you will get the chance over lunch to go and see some of the live installations taking place and some of the other talks and performances. We will then start back here at 2 o'clock for the afternoon session, so it would be wonderful if you could please make sure you're back here and seated before then. Each of our wonderful chairs are going to introduce the sessions and the speakers before they give the presentations. We're going to start with presentations, followed by the panel discussions. So we will begin now with session 1, which is going to be chaired by TJ Demos. He's a cultural critic and professor in the Department of the History of Art and Visual Culture at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So if you would all like to join me in welcoming TJ, we'll start the day off.
Thanks very much, Rachel. It's a great pleasure to be back in London. And thanks to Venetia as well, and the British Museum and the Mosaic Rooms. It's really wonderful. I look forward to the panel, which is entitled Strictly Prohibited. And this is a session that considers how artists are presenting their responses to the curtailment of freedoms, censorship, and restrictions in public spaces in different places in the Middle East. So I'm very excited to hear from this range of artists, which should be really fantastic. And I'm not going to really say anything or try to keep it minimal, but we have little time, so I'd like to get right on to the presentations. We'll begin with Abdullah Alkafri, who's a playwright and cultural activist and the Executive Director of the Ettijahat Independent Culture in Syria, but he's coming to join us from Beirut. So over to Abdullah.
Super. Good morning. Sabah al-khair. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here since it was 4 years the last time I was here in Lebanon, so I was here in London. So thank you very much for Shubak. I would like also to say congratulations to Shubak for the 4th edition. Given today's context, the content of the edition is very relevant. What's happening not only in the Arab world, but also in the world. So congratulations and thank you. Since I am the first speaker and since I am part also of the next presentation or the audio presentation for the absent ones, which is a collaboration with John Davis, Jonathan May, Muaz Mrabit, and me, I'm not gonna speak about my own artistic work. However, I will use my second hand or hat as a director of an organization, got the opportunity to work with Syrian artists, just to put a context of challenges artists are facing more and more. I decided to list them as 10 challenges. They might be helping us to think in a positive way rather than just obstacles. And the material or the visual material I will use today, it's material from artists we got the honor and the opportunity to support them in Ettijahat during the previous year. So definitely the first question is about the visa. This is one of the restrictions that more and more the artists from the Arab region are facing, especially the Syrian artists at the moment. But however, we have a long history regarding the visa issues. And the restriction in visas, it's not only about moving to another country or traveling from a country to another country, but also there is restrictions regarding sometimes traveling within the country itself. Here, it's not a visa issue, it's another problem of challenges. If we are talking about Lebanon, which is a very important country when it comes to art and culture in the Arab region, some of the Syrians, they are facing problem with mobility within the country itself, which is part of it, also affects the work of the artists. The other point, definitely, it's the censorship. And here we are talking about two levels of the censorship. So we are talking about the official censorship, which is ban the work of the artist, but also, let's say, the society-imposed censorship, which is more and more affects the work of the artist in countries such as Lebanon, which is used to be one of the very open-minded societies. We are facing challenges from with the censorship that bans the work of the artist. So the question is, how could we find another solutions to keep the artists working, or to keep also the artists creating their own work, and to keep this open-minded narrative? Stereotyping, and although it's a very easy thing, but it has really a grave consequences when we are talking about the booming of the art, or the great interest of supporting the art from the Arab world. But there is really this big challenge when we are talking about stereotyping. Mentioning the stereotyping, it doesn't mean at all that I'm talking about East versus West or North versus East, but it's a concept itself. I can be part of stereotyping my work, or I could be easily also putting my work in a frame that raising the question of stereotyping, though the question, how could you be relevant to what is very important today, but also how could you challenge the stereotyping that is easily can be happening. Public spaces, one of the ongoing challenges when it comes to the work in the Arab region. Luckily we have people such as Sofiane and Selma who are trying on a daily fight to keep the public spaces a space for us. One of the challenges also with the public spaces that is more and more shrinking in the Arab region, or sometimes it's not very clear the limits between the private spaces and the public spaces. We are seeing in a country such as Syria that the public spaces was occupied by the regime. So however, the artists most of the time are not allowed to create or to participate in their work when it comes to the public spaces, which is extremely important nowadays, since we are trying also to tackle or to target the audience in different ways, not only within the expected spaces. The other thing, it's about something, it might be not clear, but in a way or other, it's becoming more and more challenging for the artist. There is a saying of, okay, the situation is very turbulent at the moment in the Arab region, so maybe we have to accept that some restrictions on the work of the artist is allowed, which is extremely dangerous, because in a way or other, without that, we are trying in a way or other to limit the work of the artist. This is something unfortunately happening on a daily basis now in Egypt. If someone is following on what's happening in Egypt, but so the question of how could we find another solutions for artists to keep working or to keep their own work. Freedom. It's a big concept in itself, but definitely it's a very important question. It's a very important concept. Here, it's not only about the consequences of, or like the meaning of the political definition or the social definition, but also the concept of keeping your work totally liberated without having any restrictions on it in a way or other. So definitely, how could we keep helping the artists to create their own work without any restriction that might be in a way or other framing their work or putting some criteria that is not helping them to create their work, which is linked directly to what is edgy or what is popular or trendy nowadays. This is a big ongoing question if we are talking about the Syrian art, but also the art is coming from the Arab region. How could we avoid something might be nowadays edgy or trendy, and how could we make sure that we are helping the artists to create their own project or their strong project that might be relevant and important after 5 or 6 or 7 years. Partnering, it might be not directly linked, but unfortunately also more and more in the Arab region, we are losing the opportunity of creating collaborative projects with different nationalities, different sensitivities, since more and more we are moving to small scale projects or short projects. Keep the artist exploring or benefit from different sensitivities, different backgrounds, different mediums is extremely important, which is something also challenging in this context. And finally, believe in the art. Simply, I am here today because I believe in the power of culture and art, which is something might be lecturing, but however, there is the tendency to link art and culture to development, for example. So how about developing the art itself? If we are developing the art itself, definitely we can create an accumulation that helps to tackle all the ongoing question that is extremely important. By increasing this space, by having such platforms such as Shubak today, we will make sure that artists, by creating their own work, they will be able in a way or other to tackle all the important questions that must be raised today. Thank you very much for having me today, and enjoy the presentation of the other speakers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Abdullah. So the plan is to have very brief presentations, 10 minutes by each speaker, and then we'll have a discussion and invite audience questions as well. I'm only reading the very brief biographical details. You can find the full biographies in the program of the speakers. So next is Khaled Jarrar, who is a Palestinian artist coming from Ramallah.
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me well? Sabah al-khair, good morning, and I'm really pleased and so happy being with you here with such a great crowd in this Sunday morning. And I feel always that we have an obstacles in our life, and that's why I chose this title. And this title is kind of keeping me motivated, even it's a little bit depressing, but it's sometimes you don't choose your journey in life, and I don't want to talk a lot because if I will start talking, I will not stop, and I just want to show what I am doing, or kind of what I'm doing from the beginning, because in each obstacle I always try to find a solution. And as a child raised like fighting the occupation from the age of 10, I start to understand that I need to be a fighter and to fight against like occupiers. And yeah, in my childhood, I didn't play with toys, I played with stones. And with stones, I was like fighting the occupation for my own freedom. And that's why I came to art. And when I start like working with photography in 2004, I was trying to document the checkpoints in Palestine, and I wanted to go to show this photography in like white cube, and then I had some obstacles because I was like, this was my first like photography that I'm doing, and I didn't get a support, I didn't get space to exhibit them, so I decided to go to the checkpoint itself and face this obstacle and bring the photos to their main audience, to the people who are suffering from that checkpoint. So I used the fence of the Israeli checkpoints. They built my gallery there. So I was there just to use their space, because it's also our space, but we are the oppressed people in that space. I don't like to use the word victim, because we will not accept to be a victim of them. So I went there as an artist, showing my art at the checkpoint where Israeli soldiers themselves can see what they are doing. And I got like 5,000 Palestinians audience in this, but none of them came to the exhibition. They were obliged to cross there. Yeah, so I'm just showing the documentation. Basically, these are the photos that I was like showing at the checkpoint. And I did another like works in between, but I want to talk about other work here. It's like live and work in Palestine and the dream that I want to have, like this utopian state, Palestine, where it used to be, or how it used to be, or maybe it will be like something for all people, especially now, like because after 100 years of like the British promise or Balfour promise to give a land for a people without, to give the land without people for a people without a land, which is us. So somebody said 100 years ago that there is nothing called Palestinian people. There is Palestine, but there is no people there. So they decided to give it to our occupiers now. And that's why I designed the State of Palestine stamp. And as Palestinians, we are not allowed to, not me, I mean like the Palestinian Authority, they are not allowed to do any like stamps on the actual passports. So that's why I decided to make my own stamp and make my own state and start stamping it at the actual passports inside the city, the bus station in Ramallah. Basically, this is the like this project. It cost me nothing. It cost me $15, and it went everywhere because I didn't use white cube. I used the passport itself to be my white cube. I went there beyond the canvas, beyond art, beyond reality, to question the system and who issues a passport for us, who decide that we are Palestinians or we are not Palestinians or you are British or whatever. I don't believe in states anymore. I was believing, I don't believe. It's like, it's changing in my mind, in my subconscious also. Like I find that my art became my medium of resistance after stones. And this is like also like photo documentation from Berlin Biennale. So on the table, I just displaced the photography, the documentation of the process of the people that I stamped their passports. And I succeed to stamp like 700 passports. And many of them get denied entry from Israelis at Israel Ben Gurion because it's illegal according to their system. And I was once invited to the new museum after I get some like attention from the media for my work, and the Israelis, they decide to kind of punish me or to get me a message that we are watching you or something, whatever, and they denied my entry. So I got the visa. So I need to smuggle myself to Jerusalem to the embassy for the interview to get the visa. I got the visa and I was invited to go to the new museum in New York. And then I was denied or banned from leaving my own country. And I couldn't get to the exhibition. But also this big obstacle was a kind of another bridge for finding a way to tell the story more and more. And I get more attention from that. They were so stupid of stopping me. And I said, okay, thank you so much. Like I was really pissed off because I was treated as non-human. And even one of the soldiers, he told me, you're a garbage. I said, you will learn who is this garbage and how I will really teach you a lesson of that. So, and once I was invited to go to discover the borders between USA and Mexico, and because I hate borders and walls like between religion or cultures or identity or political or social borders, I decided to dismantle this wall there, and I like to remove stuff from our face to see what's beyond. So what I did basically that I removed one piece from the border wall between Tijuana and San Diego in USA, and I transformed it to a bridge, to be a bridge between people. And yeah, I used the mythology from Jacob's ladder where God sent something, and we really need like bridges between each other. And I said, I think like Shobak and this opportunity being with you, it's a good bridge to your like mind and to talk to you and to talk more about that. Oops. So this is the ladder that was installed in Juarez in Mexico in a kindergarten as a public sculpture. So lately I'm working on this project, and in this project there is something personal and nostalgic in my mind, and it took me like really 2 years to be able to talk about it now. And this is the first time I will not talk about it, but I will show something from that project. And excuse me for this is very rough, like first draft trailer for the project. And it talks about how is it to be like displaced in time, and how is it to live for your whole life displaced with no home, and how is it to experience displacement for the second time in your life through the eyes of Nadira, who I was following, and from Mytilene Island to Germany. And I find myself that I have many obstacles to be able to work with these people, with the Syrian refugees, as an artist. So I decide to be one of them. I decide to, like, it was irresponsible because I really faced a lot of problems, but I believe that it was worth it. And anyway, I'll show you the trailer first, and I will tell you a little bit more about it. Anyway, Nadira, she immigrated from Palestine in 1948 from Nazareth, and she lived her whole life in Syria, in the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria, and she became part of the new diaspora of the more than 10 Syrian refugees.
الوطن المحتل من أرضنا. مع أجمل تحياتكم مرة أخرى ومع أخباركم، وأهلا بكم جميعا أينما كنتم. الرسالة الأولى في لقاء اليوم مرسلة من فايز محمود فايز بزرقاء إلى سامية في بيت إيبان البيت، نبارك لك بالمولود. ورسالة مرسلة أيضا من خديجة درويش صقر وزوجها في عمان إلى الوالدين وجميع الإخوة في الديرة.
هلا نحن بمنطقة اسمها بودروم. هلا نزلنا، طبعا الشوفير بلحظة نزلنا منزل الغاب وحمل حاله بده يروح، معه حق طبعا.
الحمد لله الحمد لله نوصل بخير وسلام
يا رب يا رب.
الو خالد، يا استاذ خالد، يا استاذ خالد، نحن عم نغرق خبر الصباح ما ردوا علينا، صرنا ساعه بالبحر. عدي ريمان، عدي ريمان، تعي ريمان، قومي عدي هون، عدي هون، انت حامل، عدي هون. حرام عليكم، بالله عدوة مشان الله اذا سمعت خبرنا، خبر مشان الله، نحن عمالنا بنغرق، مرة قدامنا الخفر السواحل وما حدا انقذنا. قريبين نحن على قديش على اليونان قديش؟ 8 كيلو على اليونان ومرابين ينقذونا ورحمة نموت. هون الأطفال هلا بتشوفوا كله راح لمكركب هلا.
على الزباين على الوسخ على القرف. اهلين اهلا وسهلا.
السلام عليكم، كيف حالك يا حجي؟ شو اخبارك؟
الله يرضى
انا
عليك.
زي ابنك منى.
فلسطين الله. لما طلعنا من فلسطين شكل هون شكل. لما طلعنا من فلسطين اجينا على بلد عربي. اجينا على سوريا. هذا نطون هون. رايحين جاي لك البابابي لك البابابي. طلع.
وين من سوريا؟
من إدلب.
قديش لكم هون؟
10 أيام.
نحن قاعدين عم ننام بالشوارع كل نهار، بناكل قتل من البوليس هون بيقتلنا وبيرجعنا.
Excuse me, I came with him. I'm filmmaker. I have a visa. Okay. I pay now.
No, out the boat, out.
من بغداد؟ حلوة بغداد؟ لا؟ ليه؟
احنا من الناصري، مدينة اسمها الناصري. لما صار ضرب كثير امتى اليهود يهجموا على العرب وجه الصبح. والله وصاروا اليهود نص البلد يعني ما معها خبر. وصاروا يطخوا على الرايح وعلى الجاي ما خلوا حدا. طلعنا من عجبال نركض حافين عجبال. انا كنت صف الرابع. جينا من الاردن على سوريا ماشي. اجوا الدراك السوري شو عم تعمل هون؟ قال لهم ابوي انا جاي من فلسطين من عنده بدكم نرجع. قالوا لا تفضل. يا ريت رجعونا يا ريت رجعونا يا خالي يا ريت رجعونا. هن قالوا 10 ايام نرجع فلسطين هيك قالوا.
So yeah, I come to the end of my presentation, and sorry if I was like a little bit fast, but I want to be able to show this trailer. And as I told you, it's just a first draft, and I made this very quickly last week, especially to this presentation. Thank you again for your time, and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks very much, Khaled. Now up is Khaled Barakeh, who is an artist from Syria who's based in Berlin. So over to Khaled.
So hi everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Khaled Barakeh, originally I'm from Syria. Yeah, I don't know how to talk about survival of the artist. It's only necessary to talk about survival of the artist while the conflict is just still ongoing. Of course, it is important. So actually, since 2011, I decided to stop working as an artist, but to live as an artist, which is, I think it's a huge difference for me. While I was dealing with the conflict in different ways in Syria, I was invited to deal with another conflict in Derry, London, Derry. I guess most of the people here are aware of it, because usually when I go somewhere else, I introduce the conflict. But I think since we are in London, there's no need to. So yeah, as I said, I was invited there. And as you know, like you can see, for example, this was taken in Belfast. And there's two neighborhoods, the Catholic and the Protestant, and you can see the fence, how it's developed through history. So it's anthropological presentation of the history. You can see how it built first, then they kept throwing stone or chumps, and then they built the other one, and the other one where the division, it becomes very vivid. And especially now with the whole thing after Brexit and now with the new government and everything. So Anyway, so I'm not gonna introduce, as I said, the conflict itself. I went there twice, and once in a research trip, and the other time when I made the work. So the first time when I went there, I was definitely amazed by the division in Northern Ireland, because I expected to be something completely else. We are in Europe, right? Like, it's not Eastern Europe, for example, where the conflict was happening in ex-Yugoslavia or some other places. We're still in the middle of Europe, in the Western Europe. So anyway, so I went there, and I was amazed by this division, which applies on everything. Like, of course, churches, histories, taxis companies, housing, everyone live in their division, even it's the same people. So imagine the city, it's called Derry, if you are Catholic, and Londonderry if you are Protestant. So me and my friend who are sharing the same city, we have two understanding of even of our public space. So imagine the city, it's called, the city as a circle, and you have the Foyle River dividing the city. In the middle of that, there's a bridge. I found this sculpture by local sculptor called Maurice Harron. The sculptor called Hands Across the Divide. He made it 25 years ago, to point to the peace coming to the island and or to Northern Ireland, and he put in this it's kind of two guys confronting each other, and they are about shaking hands. But if you really see closely, they are not really reaching each other. They are almost there, but not really. And I found this the perfect description of modern Northern Ireland today. Two groups confronting each other, looking into each other's eyes every day, but they are not shaking hands. They are not reaching each other yet. So the first thing I thought to do, actually, is to move one guy toward the other. Like that, and that will be the work. I thought that will be my artwork, just make them touch for the first time. It was impossible because of the location of the sculpture. So I decided actually to make the negative space between the two hands into new sculpture, so kind of making the invisible visible. First, I invited Maurice, because he's still here. He's still alive, so I thought it would be great to involve him. We tried to make it manually, but it didn't work out perfectly because I wanted to be so precise. So I invited 3D scanning company. We built scaffolding. We covered it because it was raining, and they brought this amazing camera which scan cities usually, and if they want to scan, then they have this 360 degrees scanning of the whole sculpture. They give it to me. I was working with it on the computer, and then it becomes this, which is exactly the negative space between the two hands. It's called materialized distance because I want to show the people that there's this gap, because when you are emotionally and geographically attached to something, you don't see as someone from outside. I was so critical toward my position coming as a tourist artist to another conflict to deal with it, right? Because I see now, for example, a lot of artists, which is amazing, they come to work with the conflict in Syria and other conflicts in Palestine or whatsoever, it's nice, but I'm critical toward this, so I didn't want to put myself in this position. That's why I went there in research, I was talking with people and going to different places and so on. So I just wanted to be, because I have this kind of emotional distance, I was able to see this, I think, negative space. And that was, that's the other side of it. I show it in different times. That was once in a museum in Frankfurt at the MMK Museum, where it's kind of flying, because I want to represent this negative space. And outside the museum, there was an advertising column, wherein I put the 2D into 3D again, right, by placing it in around this advertising column. So when you see it, you can see it as a 3D, even it's 2D. And one side, from the front, you can see they are trying to reach each other. From the other side, on the other photo, you see their back to each other. So it becomes like a frenemy, friend-enemy situation. I consider myself definitely as a lucky artist, because each project I do, I get a gift from the project, let's say, to the project. So this was one of it. So while we were scanning the sculpture, so if they want to scan me, for example, they put the camera in different locations, right? And every time the camera, it scanned everything in a 360 degrees panoramic photo. So you can translate the 3D into 2D, which you can see, for example, this if you close the photo on itself, it will make perfect continuation between the left and the right. So we had 18 actually photographs of this. And each time you change the position of the camera, it changed the position of also the relation between these two guys, which represent, of course, the two groups. We were before Brexit. Now it's a little bit different. I don't know if we're gonna carry on the project the same way or not. But me and another guy in Northern Ireland, we were planning actually to establish a new political party, which will be based on this project, right? Because I met a lot of young people who don't really care about two groups. They just want to live and they just want to be and they just want to enjoy their life. And they felt drawn into this conflict, political, religious conflict in a way. So the idea was, I don't know if we'll see now what will happen after the new government here in UK, but the idea was to actually print this sculpture on a t-shirt, use the city as a canvas, hang 8,000 t-shirts in the city where the city will wake up. It's a free t-shirts, right? So hopefully people will gonna take it. And then we're gonna write, instead of the price, we're gonna write the launching of the political party, just to create an example. Because I don't think we can change people logic, because we have assumptions all the time, and our assumptions is based on our experience. So if I'm gonna go to turn on the light, I'm expecting the light to be on, but there's many circumstances where the light might be not on, right? Like it might not turn on. So I think the only way to change something, not by changing the logic, because people, they believe in their assumption, their logic, but by creating new environments. Because within the new environment, people you can create a new logic, or people change their logic. And that's why we thought like establishing a political party, new one, even as a model, even it's not gonna gain seat in the parliament or not, I don't know, but I think it's important. I will go from this project. As I said, like originally I'm an artist, so I was dealing I was doing visual art all my life. Now after 2011, I find myself in a position, especially because I was living in Europe since 10 years, and I was, as a Syrian artist, but not so many Syrian artists were there before, so I find myself in this bridging situation, right, between the newcomers and the locals, where I was existed. So we were facing different difficulties, and I was thinking, how can I reflect? Because from my position, people sometimes, or institutions, they ask me to nominate some artist for exhibitions or for some artwork sale or whatever. And I was ending up all the time nominating my friends and my circles. Of course, how can I know someone I don't know? But I thought this is not fair, and I thought I need to do something where the newcomers, especially the new artists, who can really be bridged. Because as Abdullah said, I believe in art. I don't believe in art as a medium of change anymore. I believe in creativity, because I'm very critical toward the art world now and how it's functioning. I think we lost it in a way. Hopefully after Trump and Brexit, we're gonna have it back. But anyway, that's another topic I don't want to talk about now. So anyway, I decided to start something I called Syria Cultural Index, and a creative database, our slogan, and it's important, I will talk about it why. So now, while all the world focusing on the heritage of Syria and the tangible heritage of Syria, which is of course important, and we should all do, right? Because it creates our identity. It's part of our identity. But I think the culture and art of today is so important, because this is what will be the tangible heritage of the future, right? Like if we now, I don't know, Michelangelo's work or Van Gogh or everyone's work in these big museums in Europe, it's considered as a tangible heritage. But back then, they were contemporary artists. And this is why I think every life matters. Like not only artists, of course, everyone, but I think also artists in this case. So what is the index? So it's as I said, it's a necessary response to the displacement. It will be an open online platform and mobile app, kind of LinkedIn, if you know, of course, I think you know LinkedIn. So it will be a professional network for creative industry, only Syrians for now. and where people, they can apply, they can create their own portfolio, their profiles, and they can upload their portfolio, and they're responsible about the content. And of course, it will be, as I said, like it will evolve all the time because people will keep feeding this data, right? Like that's why it will gonna grow up. I will just go quickly because I can't talk forever about it, just to make sure that I'm on time. Yeah, so it will support the knowledge sharing. It will, like for example, now if we want, like I came to London yesterday. I don't know who's here. I know some friends, but I don't know how I'm going to Paris, for example, to make a film. So it's great, of course, to involve, in my opinion, someone who need the opportunity also to cooperate with someone in the same, maybe cultural background, because it's something, it's also about Syria. So I can apply filters in this website where I can search France, Paris, a filmmaker, and find who's there, and either to meet or to create opportunity or to talk. Even just like to know each other and know where we are. Yeah, so anyway, so why we need this? For many reasons. Of course, the situation in Syria, the ongoing situation, which like one slap after another since 6 years, and we couldn't have take a breath, and we facing multiple destruction. The physical spaces, even of that we don't have, for example, now, which I believe the government should do this job, right? Like it's the mission of the Ministry of Culture to map the cultural scene, its cultural scene. But because of the division, because of people living inside and outside, it's not possible. Reconnect the social fabric. Now I hear this a lot, like you are outside, you don't know what's going on inside, or the other way around, like you don't know what I'm facing outside, so don't lecture me. Like sometimes this kind of conversation between people who's in and out. In the art world, of course, in general, but also in the art world. And what really make me sad sometimes that, of course, it's great, like people talk about refugee crisis and all of this, which is even, I found it ironic to call it refugee crisis. Like it was crisis forever. They just called it crisis in Europe when the refugees reach its shore, right? Like just recently, but it's crisis since forever and still happening. And so anyway, and this is what really make me sad, that we forget those who still inside. Even like there's some activists who are interested in the region and interested in our culture, they were working toward this. But since they have us now here, they start focusing on working with the people who's here, and they forget completely, like no one talk about Syrian artists or Syrians in general who remain in Syria, which is, I found it extremely sad. Another aspect of which is very, very important for me. So I think for now, and I said this since a few years actually, unfortunately we can call Syria ex-Syria, like ex-Yugoslavia. It's not existed anymore as the way we know it. And Sykes-Picot agreement, it's over the last year, so obviously there's a plan now to remap the whole region, the whole area. So we are losing our political identity. So what used to make me relevant to another artist or person is having this political identity. And since we don't have it anymore, I'm suggesting by creating this virtual online platform, another identity, which is the cultural identity, where our Syrian cultural identity becomes our identity, especially because our production now is melting within the new society we are existed, right? Like Syrians literally now all over the place. They are in Alaska, they are in like all over the place. So when I was living, as I said, abroad since 10 years, and I was mainly in Germany, and my production is considered as a part of the German culture now, which is great, but I still want to see it as a Syrian culture. I still want to connect it. And now even I'm working with a lawyer to propose any sale of an artwork. 99.9 of the artwork, the collector will own. 0.1 will go for virtual owner called Syria. Because I would love to see this work one day go back to Syria, right? And to keep this identity in a way. yeah, I mean, you are very welcome to read the website. There's a lot of things to talk about, but I just want to move to the point where what we're gonna do, because it's very important now how we reflect on this conflict. As Khaled said, I don't want to be victim. I'm not victim. I'm definitely a part of this international cultural mechanism, and I want to be part of it, and I want to reflect on it. So what will be the results? So who we are, it's maybe not so important now, but just to briefly, we are Syrians who believe in what I explained. We have an amazing board of trustees, part of them Muna Atasi, who's here, hi Muna, and who's also supporting the symposium today, and Atasi Foundation. We have Hassan Abbas, who's, I don't know if you are aware of the Syrian cultural scene, but anyway, so we have like a very respectful, for me, cultural figure who are supporting this initiative. Also, we have focal points in different countries, locals and Syrians, to also create this bridge. And yeah, this is what I want to talk about or focus on my last minutes, or I'm over actually my time. So anyway, so what we're gonna do, activities of the index. So one of all, the first thing, most of the institution now who's designing programs for Syrians, they don't really know our needs. There's expectation about our needs, right? Like, for example, I know in Germany, because the federal government, they are supporting the refugees, so they spend money towards creating and designing programs, but they don't really know what we need. So they, all the time, instead of working with us, working to us, or instead of talking to us, talking about us. So I thought, like, no, I want to be, to have some specific figures and numbers. And by creating this, you can exactly know how many, for example, Syrian cultural producer living in London, how many female filmmaker between 20 and 25 live in Edinburgh. Is there anyone? Or if not, let's design a program. So it becomes a tool, analytical tool for like more in-depth. We will print all the database on yellow pages, and we will spread it to all institutions who are interested in this, in the Syrian matter. We're going to invite the guest curators. We will give them the material we have, and also invite them to curate something on the platform, parallel platform, which will be a book or a magazine. Hopefully, we're going to make this joint forces with different institutions to create the first Syrian Pinale, because we never had Pinale. And because we are all over the world now, I think it's very important if we talk about integration. Integration goes both ways. And I believe that we should, in this way, show us and show what we have. And by doing this, I thought like the concept of the Pinale is following the trace of the tracking the refugees. So it will start on Lebanon. Of course, we can't start it in Syria, unfortunately. Maybe one day it will end in Syria. Then it will go to Jordan, then to Turkey, then to Greece, and then it will spread like with the whole Balkan road and how the refugee arrived to Europe, to Germany and Sweden and so on. Establishing cultural hub, and hopefully now we're actually working on this based on design for Iranian architect who passed away a few years ago, called Nader Khalil. It's called Ecodome, it's ecological dome. And so we are planning this with, now, we are starting this in Berlin to move around to spread on all the countries where we have representatives. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now we move on to our last speakers before we have a discussion. So I'd like to introduce Selma and Sofiane Ouissi, who are the founders of Dream City in Tunisia. And I believe they will be speaking in French, so we'll have a translator, Françoise Delas Rice. So please welcome them to the stage.
Bonjour tout le monde, merci, un grand merci à tous les partenaires de cette invitation et merci Choubak pour cette collaboration. de nous avoir invités avec Selma et de pouvoir proposer un espace de liberté à d'autres artistes. C'est ce qu'on fait déjà depuis un moment.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for welcoming us, and thank you to Shubak to make this possible and to allow us to present what we're doing. We're trying to create a space of freedom for ourselves, but also for other artists, and that's what we're going to try to present to you.
Donc Selma et moi, ça fait on est donc le background, on vient du monde de la danse, on est tous les deux chorégraphes et danseurs interprètes, mais la danse nous a vite ennuyés et on s'ennuie beaucoup. Donc on a décidé de prendre l'écriture du corps et la réflexion autour du corps et la philosophie et l'esthétique du corps d'une manière très très différente, et on est vite arrivé à la réflexion du corps citoyen.
Okay, so Selma and myself, we're both dancers and choreographers, and we've been working in that area for a while, and quite rapidly we got slightly bored with that. I mean, and we decided to think a bit further and more in depth about the shape of the body, and we started a long reflection about shapes and the body shapes.
Donc l'idée est très, très vite arrivée et avec Selma, on est très animé par inventer d'abord des espaces démocratiques, des espaces de liberté, des espaces artistiques et politiques et des espaces ouverts à tous où chacun peut inventer sa posture citoyenne dans ces espaces idylliques.
So, I mean, the idea is to find a democratic space, a freedom space, a political space, and the idea is to explore the space everybody can make with their own body, but in a sort of space of political freedom and a citizen freedom also. Oh là là, mais c'est affreux.
Donc ces espaces de société rêvée, donc on travaille beaucoup exactement sur la dimension des sociétés rêvées, que ça soit en région rurale ou en région urbaine. L'idée est toujours de rassembler un certain nombre de personnes, citoyens ou pas, spécialistes de l'art, vraiment de créer des vrais croisements entre les disciplines, entre les différentes approches, entre les différentes visions, et tout en gardant bien sûr un pont entre l'ici et l'ailleurs, entre notre contexte, entre la Tunisie et l'ailleurs, et on n'est pas dans, on ne croit pas à l'enfermement, bien au contraire, on croit à briser ses frontières et à faire que l'autre n'est pas un danger, mais que l'autre est un espoir.
Okay, what we're trying to explore together is a sort of dreamed of society. I mean, a society that accepts different approaches, different visions, which accept the opposition between here and elsewhere, between ourselves and the other, but a society where there's no imprisonment and where you accept the environment created by one and every one of us.
Bonjour. Donc, je parle de l'idée de société rêvée, donc effectivement autour des créations artistiques. On crée des protocoles qui invitent des sociétés autour de chaque projet. Et c'est des protocoles qui défendent un temps de partage et un temps long de vie en proximité. C'est des protocoles qui sont souvent sur des sociétés qui sont basées sur l'horizontalité où chacun choisit son rôle. Ce que vous avez vu avant, c'était un projet qui s'appelle La Roussa. Et c'est un projet qu'on a commencé en octobre 2010 pour l'avoir fini début 2014. Donc, en fait, on a un peu un problème avec... on n'est pas dans la diffusion, on est dans se poser, on s'est très vite posé la question de se dire, quand on était jeune, en compagnie, qu'est-ce que je fais pour là où je suis? Donc un ancrage dans ce que je fais, et ça signifie quoi? Et sorry.
for a minute only, but I think I need a break. So, I mean, really, what we're trying to explore is this idea of a dreamed-of society, and that is explored, that dreamed-of society, through artistic creation. And for that, we set up what we call protocols, and the idea is to explore in a sort of circular way what happens in a society. And these protocols, they're built up on a space of shared time together and shared life together. And it's based also on the notion and the exploration of what we mean with neighborliness, proximity, that sort of concept. What we've noted is that the areas in the society we explore, very often they're built on a sort of horizontal way, and within which everyone and every individual will choose what their role is. So one of the first projects that was presented on the screen is something called La Russa, and it started in October 2010, carried on till October 2014. And what is interesting to note is that we're not interested in spreading things around, distribution. That's not what we're aiming for. But what we were reflecting about was the fact that when we were young, the big question we had in mind, it was, what am I doing? What am I here for?
Sorry, tu perds le fil là maintenant. On en était à qu'est-ce que je fais, etc.
Donc on part toujours du contexte, même si on nous invite ailleurs. Et un temps long de travail, une proximité, et surtout, on croit beaucoup au fait que on est juste, on a une j'espère qu'on a une position humble, donc on parle beaucoup de petits gestes. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Chacun de sa place, de là où il est, avec ce qu'il sait faire, participer à une construction. Et donc, pour nous, je parlerai pas de survivre, je parle de vivre, de démarche, d'un fil. Donc, je rêve de vivre ce que je suis et pour là où je suis. Et un moindre geste, on défend beaucoup les petits et les moindres gestes, mais de proximité et sur un temps long qui amène une profondeur de l'approche. Et ça veut dire, voilà, et ça veut dire aussi que finalement, l'art n'est pas un combat, mais c'est une force. La culture est une force. Je trouve que tous, de là où on est dans ce monde-là, la culture apporte une certaine réponse, pas toutes, mais elle est une force. Donc on invente des tactiques. Donc quand il a fallu être confronté à des censures, on invente des tactiques, des manières d'être pour continuer à être, en fait.
So I was talking about this horizontal society within which everyone has a role, and the idea, therefore, was to explore what was our role, what was each one of us doing, and I think that's important to stress that we have a very modest and I would almost say a humble approach to what we're doing, but we're very aware of the context and however small the context is. But we work on a long period of time, so it's a small context which is explored over a long period of time. And what is important also is the notion of proximity, of being close to the area we're exploring. Because of that sort of modest and humble approach, we've concentrated on what I would call the small gesture, the sort of infinitesimal gesture sometimes. I mean, each one, in fact, within that context has its role, its place, and is able, whatever its talent or its capacity, to participate and to bring forth their own gesture. It's not a question of surviving. People often talk about survival. No, it's a question of being alive and living. And I think that what is important, therefore, is that length of time we devote to these projects. And it's an in-depth approach that we're exploring all together. And I think it's important also to say that our view of art is not art as a struggle or a fight, but art as a strength, actually. And each day we can invent new tactics to go more in depth.
Donc le projet aussi que vous avez vu avant, qui est Dream City, c'est réinventer effectivement notre posture en tant que citoyen, réinterroger nos relations au quotidien, comment cette machine humaine puisse prendre le temps de se poser, de se connaître, de rencontrer l'autre, et l'art devient un prétexte dans cette dimension, juste un prétexte pour favoriser la rencontre, pour accentuer la rencontre et prendre conscience de la richesse d'un territoire, de sa culture, de son patrimoine, des gens qui le composent dans la diversité de leurs tendances, qu'elles soient religieuses, qu'elles soient sexuelles, qu'elles soient... voilà, de se repencher sur l'humain.
Yes. It's important, therefore, to analyze what is our posture in each situation, and that posture, in some ways, can be reduced to our relationship to others and our exploration of the human machine, if you like, and the way that machine functions and works. And it allows us to really meet other people and use art as an exploration tool to make that encounter with the other easier and to explore together what is our inheritance and the inheritance of religion, which has different dimensions. I mean, religion, politics, and the physical dimension, sexual, etc.
Et on est très animé aussi par la dimension du geste, bien sûr, et de la partition du geste, de rendre ce geste accessible à tous, ce langage universel qui ne nécessite pas une compréhension particulière, mais plutôt une émotion humaine qui est propre à chacun, et de préserver dans les projets la singularité de chacun, et d'interroger qu'est-ce qui fait commun à tous, et de là poétiser ces espaces, les rêver et les mener avec une intense proximité avec les gens qui y participent et avec inventer cette relation humaine au quotidien et en marge des discours dominants qui nous écrasent tous et qui disent qu'aujourd'hui l'autre est un danger alors que l'autre est un espoir, l'autre est amour, l'autre est absolument vaut le coup d'être rencontré. Et là, avec ce dernier projet qui est le moindre geste, on essaie d'inventer une bibliothèque humaine, une encyclopédie du geste à travers les territoires qu'on rencontre et qu'on visite. Voilà.
Yes, so I mean our project is really concentrated on these gestures, these small gestures, these daily gestures. And what we are building up is a sort of score, like a musical score of gestures. And we become aware of the universal dimension and the fact that it's not something that distances you from others, but on the contrary, it's fed with emotions. And there is, of course, the singularity, the uniqueness of each of us, but there's also a way of exploring what makes us all human and what joins us together. And there is a sort of poetry that is being developed in a way. And of course, I mean, it's quite different from the political discourse, which would present the other as the embodiment of danger. Whereas for us, in a way, the other is the embodiment of hope, of love, and and that last project, the slightest gesture, the idea is really to give as much respect to the slightest gesture and from that to build a sort of encyclopedia of gestures all around the world.
Thank you.
So I think we'd like to invite everyone up, all the speakers up to the table, and we'll have a discussion and invite questions as well from the audience. And we have until 12:40, so another half an hour. So please sit wherever. Okay. Okay, sure. Help yourself to a bottle. Yeah, go ahead. So thanks very much to all of the speakers. I think it's a really, there's a number of really interesting connections between these presentations and a range of approaches to what art can be. And I'd like to just briefly go over some of the points that came through to me. So while the panel was titled Strictly Prohibited, in some ways the terms that come out strongly, in my view, are really proximity and distance, and the politics and aesthetics between those different categories as they intersect with different political and social and cultural conditions and technological conditions in diverse spaces in the Middle East. Sorry about that ringing in the microphone. Maybe we can lower it or something. Yeah, there. I think that's better. Whatever you did, thank you. So Abdullah began with the 10. What for him are the 10 commandments of art, and he mentioned a number of issues that came through strongly in the other presentations, including beginning with visa issues. And raising the geopolitics of crisis, of militarization, of political blockage, of the borderization of different territories, not only in the Middle East, but also the US-Mexico border, as Khaled brought it up, and the Derry-Londonderry border that was also brought up. So I think this set the tone for the rest of the panel in relationship to the embodiment of space, how proximity can occur, how it can be divisive and divided and even conflictual and militarized. Khaled Jarrar discussed his work in relationship to the situation in Palestine and the difficulties of the Israeli occupation, including his relation to the possibility of positioning art as a form of resistance, which I'd like to talk about and ask questions to everyone in relationship to that. Khaled Barakeh discussed also forms of bodily connectivity and relationality and the difficulties as well in relationship to cultural and religious and national divisions in relationship to the sculpture of the Sheikh and his new media proposal for a Syria cultural index, which is a form of overcoming potentially the geographical diaspora and displacements that occur within a field of political and military crisis, especially within the context of the current situation in Syria. And then finally, Selma and Sofiane discussed the poetics of the petit geste, or the micropolitics of gesture and bodily belonging and becoming and relating to others. So I think it was a very nice conclusion to emphasize how embodiment can be a form of hope and even express modes of love and connectivity, despite all. So one tension that I thought came up was between what Khaled Jarrar discussed as an art of resistance, compared to the other Khaled who said at one point, I believe I believe that art is not that art cannot be a medium of change, but a form of creativity. So I'd like to open it up to everyone and ask, what is the role of art in your view? Can it be a form of resistance? Can it be a form of political and social cultural transformation? Or are we dealing with a situation today where that kind of redemptive hope in artistic possibility has been really shut down and contested and destroyed? So where does the hopefulness or potentially the creativity, if not social and political and cultural transformation, where's the hopefulness of creativity in art as a practice? So whoever would like to respond to that, I invite your comments.
For me, like the word resistance started with me since early ages as a child, and like in such a situation, like as human before being Palestinian, like to resist depression and keeping the smile, it's my main way of resistance to resist like all these catastrophes is happening around Earth. And for me, being optimist and look like trying to see the light in the end of the tunnel, it's kind of my main motivation to continue working with art. And I believe in the role of the artist before believing in art as a medium. Art for me is just a tool or bridge or a language where it gives me a space to express myself and express or at least be a messenger for stories for others where they have no voice. And art gave me that voice, but art didn't give me that voice without me being insistent into like going outside that box and going against the river and find a new and creative way like to uprise against the occupation, against what's happening like not only in Palestine, also in the Arab country, and like also in the international like field, such as like in my last work with the Syrian refugees, like and how it's related to this lady that she's displaced for her whole life, and this is her second displacement, where she was obliged by force to leave her house in Nazareth, which is still exists till now, at the age of 9 years old, and she's not allowed to visit that house anymore.
Yeah, I mean, something changed completely after 2011 for me, right? Because before I was doing also this kind of resistance, believing in art as a self-expression way and also as a bridge, as Khaled said, and many things. But when I was here in Syria, when I was seeing people demonstrating in the street, risking their life, right? Like you put your life on this risk. I was questioning what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, anyway, how important it is. And also, when I came to Europe in 2008, I came, even it sounds a little bit poetic, I came in like a freedom research trip. I just want to meet myself, I want to know myself, who I am, and so on. I then slowly like digging into the art world and in discovering this institution from within, I wasn't so amazed, to be honest. Because you just discover it's just another institution, just you have to play different roles, right? So I was questioning, like in combination in these 2 points, I was questioning what I'm doing. And then this is when I decided to kind of shift my practice, or it's actually naturally shifted to have more like direct social impact. Because criticizing the system only from within, or the art system, or the white cube, or whatever, being politically engaged, it's great, but I think we need, I believe now in artivism, where I think artists should take the initiative, they should take the creativity, and that's what I meant by I believe in creativity as a medium of change, not art. They should take their creativity to another level to create direct impact, or to create this social change. Because when you go into the whole system, you start figuring out the whole like commercial galleries and markets, and you have to feed them the market in a way to survive, but that also shape your artwork and shape your development as well. And yeah, that's exactly where I decided to focus on this. And the great thing, actually, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, this term artivism started being accepted in museums and also galleries, and collectors as well start taking this in consideration. And this is the only way I see now, especially as I said, like in Syria, like we are having one slap after another, right? Like we didn't rest. So how do you reflect on this when you see someone risking their life in the street? Is it enough to document what they are doing? Is it enough to express myself? I'm not an institutional, I didn't come from institutional background. I mean, of course, I want to do the index. I'm now in the process. It's a potential project. We are now applying for fund and try to get to make it true. But I would love to do art. I would love to paint, as Abdullah said once, butterflies and flowers. You know, I just want to be like everyone else here who just are freely expressing themselves. But what is the necessity? What is my role? That was my question after 2011, which was one of it, is the index. I'm thinking about it as an art project. Even it has this organization form, but I'm thinking about it as another project, as a response to the...
Of course, art, it's extremely important. This is something I don't need to say to myself, but I think one of the most important things that art and culture is helping people to keep imagining a better future or a better tomorrow, which is something not a luxury at all. If you are talking about the Arab region, it's something really, really needed and really important, since everything around us is more and more going down on all levels. So at the same time, I believe that keep the Syrian artists creating and producing and doing themselves, it's not only a good thing we do for Syria, but we do for the humanity, because simply the art is coming from Syria is part of the humanity, or part of the yes, it's part of it, and we would like to find how could we keep that. More and more, I think the art and culture could be at least one solution to find a different narrative. I hope it was a counter narrative, but it's, let's say, alternative narrative regarding what's going on in the Arab region. If we are looking about the media and the mass media, it's terrible how this region is presented. So how could you find a different techniques, different way of raising or tackling issues that extremely affect the life of everyone here in Europe and in the region, but also creating a different way of representing the area or benefit from that. The challenges in this context, how could we, after 2011, shifting our tools as an artist, activist, and organization from urgent response to something more sustainable, taking into consideration all the art presentation that presented today, which is involving artists, citizens from the States, from Europe, from the region, by default. So this is exactly what we need, how to keep this ongoing conversation, or how to benefit from these different sensitivities and in supporting the artists to keep creating their work.
Pour appuyer un peu ce que tu viens de dire, je pense que ce qui est intéressant dans ce métier, mais dans le monde de la culture en général, c'est qu'il n'y a pas une définition de l'art. Et que justement, là, on le voit très bien avec le témoignage de Khaled. Et c'est vraiment, du coup, les institutions aussi. On a une lecture à faire dans... il y a une invention avec nos situations politiques, mais la situation politique du monde entier, à chaque instant, de ce qu'on attend des artistes ou de ce qu'est l'art aujourd'hui. Et donc, je trouve que cette définition doit évoluer, et finalement, les institutions devraient évoluer aussi dans cette définition de l'art.
I mean, I would like to support what you said in a way, but I mean, the problem is that there isn't a given definition of art or artist or art institutions. And it's very important what you're talking about, that notion of a dialogue and a constant evolution. But it's very important to reflect on what exists and how we can promote it and make it evolve and make sure that we're involved ourselves in that transformation.
Et donc, c'est cette tension-là qui moi, personnellement, m'intéresse en tant qu'artiste. Cette redéfinition de tous les jours, de ce que je suis et de ce que ce monde-là peut offrir. Et cette interrogation-là est aussi à prendre en compte par les institutions elles-mêmes qui viennent vers les artistes leur demander de faire quelque chose en attente d'une image, mais finalement c'est à nous tous de l'inventer et de comprendre qu'on est en train de bouger énormément. Aujourd'hui, ce qui a été présenté, c'est plus des démarches, des protocoles, des démarches, une manière de faire et d'être au monde plus qu'un résultat.
And I think, I mean, it's very important to maintain that tension between the idea or the image of what art is and what really is happening on the ground and what is happening within myself, for example, as an artist and as a citizen. And we've got to be aware of what also the institutions are expecting from us. I mean, they expect a certain approach, a certain product, but they've got to be aware of what we're doing, which is not something that is frozen, but it's something which is in becoming, in a way. And it's very much what all of us were talking about. I mean, we were talking about approaches, protocols, I mean, an index being built. I mean, it's not something that is frozen and rigid.
Et enfin, j'ai plein de réponses.
I've got masses of replies and answers to provide.
Donc, voilà, donc il n'y a pas une réponse à cette question, mais je pense que un artiste cristallise une situation dans le monde à un temps T.
I mean, I think really the artist freezes or crystallizes a given situation at a specific moment in time, but that's all we can do, really.
Mais dans sa singularité et enfin, l'artiste de tout temps prend le temps, par rapport à des gens qui vont tous les jours au travail, de laisser entrer en lui le monde et d'y répondre avec sa posture à lui. Et donc enfin, nous on vient du corps, donc il y a une porosité qui nous est permise parce qu'on prend cet espace et ce temps. La société normalement devrait payer les artistes pour prendre ce temps-là et pour être dans un sensible au monde que des gens X, Y qui vont au travail tous les jours n'ont pas ce temps-là. Donc, enfin.
And I think in a way, I mean, as artists, I mean, we have a time of reflection. I mean, the people who go leading their daily life, I mean, they've got to go off to work. And I mean, of course, I mean, there is that dimension of daily life which is present also in our lives as artists. But we have the time to reflect and to let time come inside us. And there is a sort of porosity which exists between existence and our inner life, in a way. And in some ways, I believe that institutions of government should pay artists for that time of reflection, analysis, and then producing something new from all that.
Et puis ensuite, la transformation poétique se fait de par la singularité de chacun. Mais pas parce que je suis arabe, j'ai un peu du mal à stigmatiser, mais parce que je suis, à un moment donné, tout ce que j'ai vécu, tout ce que j'ai laissé entrer en moi, certainement en tant qu'arabe, mais aussi en tant que femme, mais aussi en tant que personne qui a connu d'autres choses, d'autres manières, mais aussi surtout avec toutes les rencontres que j'ai faites. Et donc on n'est pas dans une stigmatisation culturelle, la culture s'invente, enfin ce qu'on est culturellement s'invente tous les jours avec notre rencontre.
I mean, I think also what I express, I mean, is linked to what I've experienced. I mean, it's not just the fact that I'm an Arab woman. I mean, it certainly isn't because I'm Arab that I can express or have an artistic vision. And I was talking earlier about the importance of the body and gestures. I mean, it's everything I've experienced as a woman, as a mother. I mean, the encounters I may have had in my life, the people I may have met, that's what feeds and gives birth to my artistic expression, not just the fact that I'm Arab, although that, of course, has a marked influence also.
Donc voilà, pour résumer, pour moi, c'est une façon d'être au monde.
I mean, for me, really being an artist, it's a way of being in the world or by the world.
Thanks very much. Given the title, Strictly Prohibited, I'm also conscious of how we're also living at a time when the mediascape within the Arab world is ever threatened, and I know that Saudi Arabia and Egypt are currently putting pressure on Qatar to shut down Al Jazeera, which I think would be a really momentous event within the conditions of censorship and public speech. I'm very conscious of how little time we have, so I want to make space for audience questions. So I'm wondering if at this point, if there are any questions to our panelists from the audience, and if you could keep it short, that would be great, so we could have a lot of questions.
Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to ask whether or not we believe in art as a catalyst for change. I'm thinking about the notion of collective social power. If we think of the language of politics and that people need to consolidate identities, social cohesion, make things happen, I'm getting a sense from the speakers that most of the art projects presented today are more about the dispersion of power and against consolidation. So I'm wondering, is the political project in art, or art as a catalyst for change, can they be in opposition, or can they actually work to, without reducing each other, work to each other's advantage?
Would anyone like to take that question? Maybe we can take another question and then it can feed into the discussion.
But actually, would you not just want to, if you can summarize the question? That's hard asking.
I think the question, correct me if I'm wrong, the question is considering art as a catalyst for change, does that end up in a dispersion of different positions, or can these practices work together to build a momentum for transformation?
Is more as art as activist, politics of art, and art separately, or are you saying they can be cohesive together, or they work in opposition, politics and art?
Right, so can politics and art work in cohesion, art and activism, or are they separate and dispersive?
I mean, it would be a very short answer, and the answer is actually what I'm doing, right? Because I'm trying to combine the 3 points together to come in something like the index or the shape, the new political party in Northern Ireland. So I believe so. I actually don't see it any other way now. Of course, I'm seeing other work and enjoying it, and enjoying whatever people doing. It doesn't need necessarily to be political all the time, but for me, because of the time we live in, I see it very, very necessary to combine these 3 points together.
Concernant cette question, moi je trouve qu'elle est très spécifique à des contextes, et tous les contextes sont différents. Donc c'est vraiment, tout dépend de là où on est, tout dépend de notre contexte au quotidien, tout dépend de notre contexte de vie. En nous concernant, moi je pense que au travers de tout le travail qu'on est en train de faire, effectivement, il y a une dimension de résistance, et que notre pratique est purement aussi politique. Elle est esthétique, mais elle est aussi éminemment politique, parce qu'on réinvente cette dimension de marche dans la cité, parce qu'on est en perpétuel mouvement, et on a l'impression que si ce mouvement n'est pas perpétuel, il y a risque de mort. Donc il y a une résistance par ces corps, par cette dimension de fabrique humaine, fabrique de l'esthétique, et toute cette dimension de réflexion en permanence, se tenir éveillé à quelque chose, éveillé aux politiques, et présent, physiquement présent dans les espaces, dans la réflexion, à différents niveaux. Ça part de l'éducation à l'accompagnement de l'artiste, à nourrir la cité d'esthétique, à nourrir la cité de réflexion, à croiser les disciplines, à croiser les regards, les visions, à habiter pleinement par l'art nos espaces de vie. Donc effectivement, il y a l'activisme, et on n'en parle même pas. Je veux dire que on est né complètement dedans, mais moi je pense qu'elle est purement contextuelle et spécifique, et tout dépend de l'espace de vie qu'on pratique. Voilà.
Yes, I mean, I think that really it is linked to the context. But I mean, for example, in our work, I mean, there is constantly that dimension of resistance. I mean, we're building something in the field of aesthetics, if you like, but it certainly has a political dimension. And we're working with bodies which have to be standing, which have to be moving. And so therefore, there is constantly that sort of resistance of the body, that building up of that physical machine, if you like. There's the resistance of all this body. I mean, it expresses in the physical space that idea of resistance, but it exists in several levels. And I think it's from that we can feed our reflection on what is the city, what is the notion of discipline wherever we want to go. And that space we're inhabiting with our bodies, in a way, it's also the expression of our activism. I mean, there is not even any need to talk about activism. The fact that we're standing, we're moving, and we're analyzing all these movements, I mean, it is a form of activism.
I don't think that I personally will be able to have a clear answer for you, but I consider myself as an active person, an active human for what I'm doing, and I don't like to be positioned as an artist or as an activist or active artist, whatever. I personally believe that I do what I do because I have something inside me that trying to discover and trying to be more experimental in my life and trying to be more creative for my own self before being because also I found that this is the language that I am good with, or I'm trying to use this as my language. And it's also very important to see the background and the history of the artist. Me personally, I trained to be a soldier, and I became a very professional, I became professional, and I trained to be a bodyguard, and I worked as a bodyguard with Arafat for 8 years, and this kind of big change in my life, me myself, I can't really understand, and I'm in research to be able to understand who we are and how I was in that position as a soldier, carrying a machine gun to protect somebody and using this machine gun after being using stones, and now I'm not using that anymore, but I'm still good with that skills. I have the skills that I trained to shoot and to kill, and I'm in the process of transforming that skills to other skills for what I'm doing now. And it's not a resistance towards the system only, it's a resistance toward my own identity as who am I, and yeah. So that's why I like to keep it more experimental and discover. And when I find an obstacle, also my background, my history, it gives me a lot. And be trained as a soldier, being with that place, with the refugees, I didn't make a conscious decision to be a refugee. I went there to film with them as an artist. But I found that I can't be an artist. I need to be somebody else to be able to be with them, to live with them for 32 days. And for that 32 days, I was carrying the camera, I was carrying the notebook, but in between, I was having this Swiss knife. And this is my own, maybe it's subconscious, how I will eat, because I think also about surviving and protecting myself from from this darkness.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah.
My question is kind of a concern around the Syrian index, the cultural index. And I'm wondering, you presented it as a quite liberal, democratic, front-ended platform, but I wonder who the gatekeepers are to legitimize what constitutes Syrian cultural production on the one hand, and if you position yourself as that gatekeeper, how do you manage the conflicts that can be incited through cultural production as it doesn't have regulated filters in a digital space?
Well, I'm proposing the index as a space for everyone, basically. I had a question once which kind of changed my way of thinking of it, because obviously I'm against the regime, right? And I think everyone should be on a moral level. So I had a question, someone asked me, so if someone who's supporting the regime and who's good enough, do you accept him or her in the index? And my first reaction, no, of course not. Then I thought, who I am, first of all, to decide the loyalty of someone toward the conflict, or maybe he or she think they are right, I'm wrong, I'm the bad one, right? Or also, how can I decide, because also that's another question, how can we, because I want to keep it professional, so who do I accept, and how do I accept people? It's because not everyone making profile like Facebook, it will be appeared online, right? So you have to have our confirmation, which won't be me deciding who's on and not. It will be special jury, professional people who meet every month to decide if this should be accepted or not. And so I didn't want even to give myself this power to decide that the level of creativity of someone to be a part of it or not. So I'm very aware of this. Also, I'm very aware of, as I said, I'm talking about the social fabric, right? So it's not in terms of only inside and outside, but also to have a space literally for everyone where it becomes a kind of common ground because we live in extreme division now between everything in Syria. So I'm proposing this as a space for everyone.
Rachel, are we out of time? So I'm really sorry we're out of time. I'd like to thank all the speakers, and we're going to move on to the next lecture theater or the nearby to hear the performance for the absent ones. So thank you, everyone.